It's me. Hey guys, it's me, Brianca Jay, and I'm back. Today we're still dealing with Antigone, and today we're going to tear into Creon, the new king's very first speech. We're going to figure out what kind of person he is and what we can learn about him from the things he says in this particular scene. So stay with me. The first thing we're going to do is read this scene from Antigone and analyze his characterization. Check it out. The new king is now taking his rightful place on the throne, and he is addressing his new citizens, and he's telling them like, hey, I'm a cool guy, this is the kind of man I am, you should get to know me and give me a chance. And then he finally ends it by saying, oh, also, yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and bury that one guy, but like that other guy, we're just gonna leave him because I don't like how he handled things. And that pretty much starts off this scene. So there's a couple times in here that he uses particular words that lets us know what kind of person he is. One of them happens in line 185. He's after much tossing of our ship of state, and he's talking about the turbulence that it has been upon losing a king, gaining a new king, going to war, and how that can be very difficult for a country. A lot of times when we explore things that are very collectively together, we can feel how difficult it is as a unit. For instance, Hurricane Harvey was very difficult for Houstonians, as well as COVID-19 pandemic, which is very difficult on certain countries and certain areas of the world, and you can collectively feel it. And so he's talking about that type of collective discomfort where you kind of feel like you're being tossed around as if you're on a ship and the storm's coming in and you don't really have control of the ship. And that's the kind of connection he's making, this idea of not being in control of your fate or not feeling in control of your fate. And so he says this is now ending because he is finally taking his rightful place on the throne. And he also thanks God for this because he says God has finally made it right. So he pretty much accuses these people of trying to do things, but he believes like he's getting this opportunity because one, he's been chosen by God, and two, this is like what God wants. This is what is intended. So that's one of the first things we need to understand about Creon. So after Creon tells everybody like, hey, so yeah, pretty much I've been chosen by God, and you know, I know we've been going through some things, but God has made it right. He goes on to another point that he wants to make, and he's basically telling them what kind of ruler he's going to be. Because you know, you just got a brand new manager, president, teacher. You probably want to have a good idea of what kind of person this is going to be. So Creon's going to tell the people who he is. And some of the things he says is, I wouldn't stay silent if I saw disaster moving here against the citizens. And there are principles if I'll use in order to protect our state. So he pretty much says, I'm not the kind of guy that's gonna take my own personal ideas above the country. I'll always put the country first. I'll always put the citizens first, and I will always protect you guys. So he's telling the people that I'm gonna protect you, I'm here for you, and you guys can really trust me to do what's right. His next statement is pretty much, we're gonna bury this one guy and not the other. These two men happen to be brothers, Oedipus or Polynices. So what he wants to do is go ahead and say, hey, I'm gonna bury Oedipus because he says he's the best and bravest of our spearmen. So pretty much Oedipus was on his side of the war. Like, hey, he fought with me, he was a good dude, and I like him because he fought to save our city. So I'm gonna bury him and show him respect. The other brother fought obviously on the other side of the war, and that angers him. So as a person who fought on the other side of the war, he pretty much says he doesn't deserve a true burial. He was eager to wipe out his ancestral city and lead men into slavery. This actually is a pretty common issue when it comes to war. Typically, if you were in a war and soldier died from the other battle, you wouldn't really go out of your way to bury them or pay them respect because you consider them your enemy. However, this is very different because this man happens to be from this city, and he was also had some right to the throne. So you can take a little bit of you can be a little incredulous when it comes to Creon's announcement. They were on different sides of the war, so naturally he's going to have a very negative outlook to what Polynices was actually attempting to do. You'd have to go back to the other plays before this to get a very in-depth understanding. But naturally, he's the one telling the story. He's in charge, okay? So he's saying Polynices tried to lead people to slavery. He is not going to bury this man. That's how he feels. Now it's up to us to decide if this particular treatment of these brothers is justified. Is it okay to give one a decent treatment and give the other one a harsh treatment? Is it okay? And then who's really being punished here? If you choose to not give Polynices the proper burial, how does that affect Polynices versus how it affects his family and the people that he loves? So there's a bit of a question there on the justice and who's truly given justice and who's being denied justice based on this decision. This is his decree nonetheless. So we have to continue. So now we have the chorus. And as I said, the chorus pretty much represents the town people, the people that are a reflection of the city and who will be most impacted by this change. We want to understand how are they seeing this new change in power. And it starts off with the chorus leader kind of saying, it seems to me now you have all the power. It seems to me you now control all the laws, right? He tells him this, and this is kind of like one of those statements you're like, well, it seems like you're in charge now. So Creon gives all these orders out, and the dude's kind of like, if you say so, boss. But it also shows us that he's concerned about the level of power that Creon has taken on. Yeah, you say you're a good dude, and you say God chose you, and you say all these things are for the best and how you love your city, but like, I don't know you, bruh, so you know, we're gonna see. They also tell him like, maybe you don't need to be king, like maybe you've gotten a little too old. You may want to leave ruling to some people that are like appropriately aged. And pretty much tell him like, son, you get old, you need to step down and let somebody else kind of be the king, because we really don't trust you to kind of take care of things the way you think you're going to take care of things. This is natural. Everybody has some ideas about who should be in charge, who should be the president, who should be, you know, the principal, who should be the teacher. These kind of questions of authority come up naturally, and it's natural for people to be incredulous when it comes to someone taking power, especially if their argument for having power is God chose me and I'm a good person. Like, I would need stronger evidence than that. Now, unfortunately, before these guys are able to take this body, kind of leave it out for the vultures to eat, the body comes up missing. The body comes up missing, and they go back to let Creon know, like, hey, unfortunately, we can't disrespect it because someone's already buried it and shown it all the respect and disappeared. For whatever reason, Creon is having a hard time understanding that though I told you, it doesn't necessarily mean I've done it. We kind of meet people like these, people that kind of, the saying is they shoot the messenger, right? So Creon begins this attitude of shooting the messenger, and the guard is trying to convince Creon, like, bro, we wouldn't do that. Like, we didn't bury the body, calm down. And he tells him, we were prepared to pick up red hot irons and walk through flames. That's one of those statements almost like when our parents tell us, I'm gonna beat you black and blue. Or when someone says, I'm prepared to go to the moon and back. It's a hyperbole, and it's not real. It's not an actual thing you're gonna do. It's simply to exaggerate how important or how far you would go in order to show someone your respect or love or even disrespect. It can be used in two ways, right? If I beat you in black and blue, I'm gonna show you how angry I can be, right? So it's that's what they're trying to tell Creon and let him know, like, we would not disrespect you, and in fact we were prepared to go above and beyond to show you our loyalty, but the body's gone. Dude, calm down. Okay, so now Creon's getting mad, and the chorus in response to his anger is getting pretty desperate to come up with some type of reason why this body's gone. So they just say, God did it. Which is, I guess, a legitimate answer to Grecian people who had a very, very strong religious faith. God did it. Except in this case, it really ticks Creon off, and he's like, stop before you make me mad. Like, stop before I become enraged. This is how mad he's getting. And it almost shows how different his attitude was. Because if you remember back in the beginning, he was all like, hey, thank you guys for respecting me so much, and you're so loyal, and I owe you everything. And now he's all like, bruh, say something else and I'm gonna smack you. So these are two different attitudes we're getting from one king, which is gonna make the people in the city kind of look at him a bit strange if I were to have to infer what would happen next. I'm thinking like, okay, I know y'all been talking about me I know y'all been talking about me, son. And he's like, y'all been muttering behind my back. And it's like this paranoia that's building in him, except people are actually muttering behind his back. Antigone and Esmene are actually, in fact, muttering behind his back. But he don't know this. Anyway, he come off a little crazy, a little Hamlet-like, thinking that everybody's talking trash about him. And now he's gotten everybody else upset with him to the point that the guard, who in the beginning of the text was kind of indifferent, has now become a little irritated. At first he's trying like anxious to explain like, hey dude, like I'm just letting you know what happened. I didn't really have nothing to do with it. Like everything is good. But then he comes back and he's like not hearing it. So he tries to explain it again, like I'm the bearer of the news, but like I'm not the criminal. And then Creon is a little thick. So he starts getting real sarcastic with him, because it's almost like, if you're not gonna listen, I'm becoming more and more frustrated to the point that I'm being sarcastic and ingenuine in my speech. And that's what kind of happens between these two people. And then we even have the chorus make a statement now that's quite interesting. They talk about white-capped ocean seas, and that is an indication of a stormy ocean. And the oceans in a storm is typically a lot of white, I don't even know what it is. The water fizzes up to the point like it's white at the top. You talk about going through a storm, and and your life is like a storm, and how you navigate through life. You know, it's a U-turn. I know y'all don't. It's a U-turn for my non-drivers. But yeah, he's talking about how you navigate through life. And this tells us a lot about who Creon is. Like Creon, as a king, we were just seeing two different aspects of his personality, which is important. Like I personally prefer to know the good and bad side of my king, or my president, or my manager. And so this happens for them, and they can make a well-rounded assessment of what kind of person he is. And he's a little more of a complex character, though we typically see a king to be very stern and ruling and very thoughtful. This king is more human-like, and we see these different attitudes and emotional changes. And it's not that it's so simple if he's a good person or a bad person, because in the reality is no one person can be good or bad. A person is a complex individual, and so you're going to have to be specific when you try to think of ways to describe this person's demeanor, more than he's a positive person or a negative person or a good person or a bad person, because the Grecians, which they've displayed in their literature, are very, very interested in the complexity of human beings. And so because we're complex people, they don't decide on good or bad, but give a lot of different duality and aspects to human nature to really bring in a fully rounded. Hey, it's me, Brianca Jay, and I just want to thank you for tuning in. I want to ask you right now to show me a lot of love, a lot of support, and go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you didn't know, now you know. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and when you subscribe, you help me get to my goal. That's all I'm saying. Love you so much.